This video is brought to you by TogetherBudget.com. Let's talk about why having an emergency fund is crucial for your financial stability. It's not just a nice to have, but a must have.
I agree. But what makes it so essential?
Well, life is unpredictable. You never know when you'll face unexpected expenses like car repairs, medical bills, or even losing your job.
That's true. And having an emergency fund in place can help you navigate those situations without going into debt.
Exactly. With a solid emergency fund, you'll have the financial cushion to cover unexpected expenses and avoid dipping into your long-term savings or taking on high-interest debt.
I see what you mean. But how do we determine the right amount for our emergency fund? Is it just 3 to 6 months worth of expenses?
That's a great question. The general rule of thumb is to save 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in your emergency fund, but it really depends on individual circumstances.
What do you mean by individual circumstances?
Well, factors like job security, income stability, and debt obligations can all impact the right amount for your emergency fund.
I see. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. You need to consider your unique financial situation and adjust accordingly.
That makes sense. But what about people with variable income, like freelancers or entrepreneurs? Do they need a bigger emergency fund?
Absolutely. And it's also essential to review and adjust your emergency fund regularly as your income, expenses, or debt situation changes.
That's a great point. How often should we be reviewing our emergency fund?
So, let's talk about calculating your emergency fund goal. It's not just about saving a certain amount of money, it's about covering unexpected expenses that can arise at any time.
That makes sense. I've always thought of an emergency fund as more of a safety net, but I never really thought about the specifics.
Exactly. And to determine how much you need, let's consider a few factors. First, think about your income and expenses. How long can you cover your basic needs without taking on debt or dipping into savings?
Okay, I think I can do that. But what about expenses like car maintenance or medical bills? Those seem like they could add up quickly.
Absolutely. Those types of expenses are often referred to as unpredictable expenses because they're not necessarily tied to your regular income cycle.
So, how do we account for those?
Now that we've considered your income and expenses, as well as any unpredictable expenses, let's talk about the actual amount you should aim to save.
I'm starting to get a sense of how this works. But what if I already have some savings? Do I need to start from scratch or can I build on top of what I've got?
When it comes to keeping an emergency fund, one of the most important things is liquidity. You want to be able to access your money quickly and easily in case you need it.
That's so true. But where should we keep this emergency fund? Should we put it in a high-yield savings account or maybe look into low-risk investments?
High-yield savings accounts are often a good option because they offer easy access to your money and tend to have higher interest rates than traditional savings accounts.
That's great, but what about the interest rate? How much can I expect to earn?
Money market funds can also be a good option, but keep in mind that they often come with some level of risk.
What kind of risk are we talking about?
Let's start with the importance of having a consistent savings plan. This is where automation comes in. Setting up automatic transfers from your checking account to your emergency fund can make saving easier and less prone to being neglected.
I completely agree, but what if someone doesn't have a steady income or their expenses are irregular? How do they create a consistent savings plan?
That's a great question. In that case, it might be helpful to create a separate fund for irregular expenses, such as car maintenance or property taxes. This way, you can allocate money towards those expenses when they arise.
But what about avoiding unnecessary withdrawals from our emergency fund? How do we prevent dipping into it for non-emergency expenses?
Reviewing your emergency fund regularly is crucial to ensuring it's sufficient for unexpected expenses. Consider setting a reminder every 6 to 12 months to review your fund's balance and adjust your contributions as needed.
That makes sense, but how do we know if our emergency fund is too big or too small? What are some key indicators of whether it's sufficient?
When it comes to building an emergency fund, one of the most common mistakes people make is overestimating their progress.
I completely agree. I've seen so many clients get caught up in the excitement of saving a certain amount and forget that life can be unpredictable.
Exactly. They think, oh, I've saved $10,000, I'm all set. But then unexpected expenses come up, like a car repair or medical bill, and suddenly they're back to square one.
And it's not just the financial aspect. It's also the emotional toll of going through that experience again. It can be really demotivating.
That's right. So, what's a good way to avoid this pitfall?
Well, I think it starts with being realistic about our financial situation and setting achievable goals. It's better to have smaller, incremental milestones rather than aiming for some arbitrary number.
I love that approach. And what are some other key takeaways from this scenario?
Another common mistake people make is neglecting to maintain their emergency fund over time.
That's right. Once the initial savings are done, it's easy to forget about the fund and let it gather dust.
And that can lead to a false sense of security. They think, I've got this covered, but in reality, their emergency fund is slowly dwindling.
Exactly. So, how can we avoid this pitfall and keep our emergency fund healthy? Another mistake people make is confusing their emergency fund with other savings goals.
I see this all the time. They're trying to save for a down payment on a house or retirement, and they start using their emergency fund as collateral.
This tutorial is brought to you by Malik Abwalzait.